Chester Bennington is no longer with us. The LA County coroner and everyone else investigating has ruled this death as a suicide by hanging. It was over a month ago that Linkin Park's latest album, One More Light, was released, and I made a video talking about if we, as fans, will ever be happy with Linkin Park again, as their music has become more and more divisive over the years. No matter what type of Linkin Park sound you preferred, I think it's safe to say we all wanted him around and wanted Linkin Park to keep going. And now, without Chester, I don't know if Linkin Park should continue. In the past 3 months, the rock world has lost two unique and iconic vocalists that changed people's lives through their music, Chris Cornell and Chester Bennington. We lost them both to suicide. We lost them both unexpectedly and not knowing how severe their personal struggle was. I was fortunate enough to see Soundgarden and shoot the performance at Welcome to Rockville on April 29, 2017. Chris Cornell was found dead in his hotel room less than 3 weeks later. When I saw that man on stage singing, I would have swore he was having a good time on stage, and I never once heard any other band saying a bad thing about that man ever. I have trouble looking through these photos now because it was only 2.5 weeks before he passed, and I never would have guessed something like that would have happened ever. I never would have known. I don't think many people ever would have. This was one of the voices of a generation back in the early 90s. And then we found out that one of the voices of a generation in the early 2000s is now also gone in the same abrupt way. Linkin Park stood out like a rose in the mix of so many changing styles, and their debut Hybrid Theory is literally one of the best-selling albums in United States history. These are world-known musicians that actually knew each other quite well and had big impacts on each other's lives. After Cornell's death this past May, we found out that Bennington died in what appears to be a deja vu type manner on what would have been Chris Cornell's birthday. It's dark stuff, and even though I do kind of want to go into detail about how this affects me personally, that's really not the point of this video. It should be about Chris Cornell and Chester Bennington, not some guy on YouTube. Families have been left behind, bands' careers potentially ended, and a lot of confusion the world over is still hanging. It leaves a lot of negative thoughts for everyone. So instead, I suggest how we can remember Chris Cornell and Chester Bennington. For starters, we can remember all of the music they gave us for many years while struggling in their own lives. Look at all the bands and projects these men were involved with. Both of them also heavily promoted various charities in their lives. They did all these things while having their own personal problems that didn't just go away because they were successful. I am a firm believer that suicide should not be a measurement of how strong or weak a person is. We have no way of knowing what's going on through the minds of these people before their passing. There are some people like Brian Welch, aka Head from Korn, who are very upset about the situation and how this unfortunate circumstance has happened again in such a short time in the rock world. I'm not trying to belittle how people react, but I do disagree with anyone seeing Chris Cornell, Chester Bennington, or anyone else who has committed suicide as cowardly. It's also very unfair for one person to compare their own personal struggle with depression and mental illness to someone else's life. We can't compare things like that. It just doesn't work that way. Our brains are wired differently, and people will always have an opinion and interpret situations in life in various ways. You can't expect someone with severe mental illnesses like depression, bipolar disorder, and schizophrenia to be easily compared between each other. It's going to be different situations for everyone. What we know is that for decades, these men had a hard time fighting through things and still worked for their passion and were good to their fans. They touched millions of lives through their words and shaped many adolescents into adults through their music. That's how we can remember them. We remember someone like Robin Williams as being extremely funny and quick-witted, and for all the movies he was a part of and projects he was in that people still love to this day. It's been a few years now since his passing also, and while we miss him and still want to continue with all the thoughts he left us in good ways, we remember how hard he made us laugh and emotional he made us in his acting. We don't focus on how he went out. To reiterate, we can remember Chris Cornell and Chester Bennington for all the amazing music they gave us over the years. We should also remember that they did that while working through their own personal problems. We live in a world where we see our idols and favorite musicians like they're some type of superhero. They're human just like the rest of us. That being said, and I can't stress this enough, and I might be repeating myself for years to come, if you are feeling suicidal and you can't stop craving your own death, and you can't get the thoughts out of your head day after day, try to get help. It's worth it. Just because you might be alone now, and just because you may not be able to focus on anything else, does not mean that things can't get better and that there won't be someone that cares about you. You're not alone if you don't want to be. We are very fortunate to live in a time where we can reach out to people instantly if we need help. There are anonymous ways to do this also, even if you don't trust the people around you or you're afraid of what someone might say. But again, it's worth it to try to get help. I promise, things can get better. Don't think forever that you're locked in the position you're in. You're not. Everyone has some way to find help, whatever that is. We're all different, and everyone's not going to have the exact same resolution, but it's worth it to try. If you've tried reaching out to loved ones or people that live near you or a part of your daily life and still nothing is progressing and you still feel things are getting worse and you can't move away from the thoughts in your mind, then try reaching out to one of those websites or anonymous chat lines or those websites with anonymous chat help that'll really talk you through things if you need immediate help to get out of that situation. People are affected by mental illness differently. Everyone has a different thinking pattern and mindset, so it's ridiculous to think that there's only one solution to a mental illness. There are many different routes. If one route doesn't work, we can't just think, oh, well, there's no hope. No, that's not it. If you've tried reaching out to people in your personal life, and you've tried talking to people online in anonymous chats and hotlines and things like that, then maybe you should try talking to a doctor to see if medication might help. Maybe try group therapy and trying to talk to other people who might have at least some experience in certain ideas and thoughts that you're having, even if your situations are different. There are many different routes to try to get help, and they're worth pursuing. I can't stress this enough. We're not meant to suffer. Life is not meant to be locked inside our own mind and just have these thoughts over and over again. People do care, even if they're not around you right now. I promise things can get better. I think I can at least speak for many people in saying I wish the last 3 months didn't see Chris Cornell and Chester Bennington leave us in such a sad way. Don't think that no one would miss you if you were gone also. You'd be surprised by just how many people will you affect in a positive way each day. It's worth trying to get better no matter how dark things get. We can remember the ones we love, like Chris Cornell and Chester Bennington, by all the music they gave us in their lives. We don't have to focus on how they went out in their passing. And for those of you that might have the same thoughts that they were having and are struggling every day, it's worth it to try and get help. You have no idea how much of a positive impact you have on people around you. For them and for yourself, try to get help, because things can get better.